Princess Leora of Xylar Prime looked out of the vast observation window at the shimmering city below. Spires of silver and crystal reflected the light of 3 suns, creating a kaleidoscope of colors that danced across the palace walls. She had grown up in this world, a world where precision, intelligence, and order were valued above all else. Yet today, she felt a strange mix of anticipation and uncertainty. Today, she was leaving it all behind. The Council of Elders had decided, in what they called a joke of sophistication, to send her to Earth. Their reasoning was simple and cruelly clever. Humans were messy, unpredictable, and utterly primitive compared to Xylarians, and Leora, rumored to be infertile, was the perfect candidate for their experiment. They expected her to live among humans for a while, experience their chaos, and return with nothing but amusing stories. Leora had heard the whispers in the palace halls for years. The infertile princess. Some courtiers called her. She cannot carry life, but perhaps she can carry their tales. They had laughed when the council announced the plan. Leora herself had smiled politely, but inside, a spark of curiosity had ignited. She had spent her life in perfection and structure. Perhaps seeing the world through human eyes could teach her something new, even if it was meant as a joke. The portal chamber was unlike anything on Earth, a sophisticated creation of energy and light. With a soft hum, the portal opened, showing a swirling blue and green planet in the distance. Earth. Leora stepped forward, her heart beating faster than she remembered it ever had. The council had instructed her in the basics of human life. Eat their food, speak their language, and observe their customs. Do not engage too deeply, they had warned, though their eyes twinkled with amusement. She arrived in a bustling city. The air thick with smells she could not identify, sounds that made her head spin, and colors that seemed more random than purposeful. People hurried past, staring at her luminous skin and tall, elegant frame. She wore the ceremonial garb of Xylar Prime, a flowing robe that shimmered with tiny crystals. Humans stopped and whispered. Some pointed. A few even tried to take pictures. Leora felt a flicker of discomfort, but she straightened her back and smiled politely. Her first interactions were awkward. She went to a small market to learn about human food. The fruits were soft, their smells tangy and strong. She tried biting into a strange red fruit called an apple and nearly recoiled. The taste was sharp, sweet, and sour at the same time, unlike anything on Xylar Prime. The vendor watched her with curiosity. "You're new here, huh?" he asked. Leora nodded, unsure how to respond. Words sounded different in this language than in her mind. She tried mimicking him, and he laughed gently, explaining patiently. As days passed, Leora struggled to adapt. Humans were unpredictable. They laughed at jokes she didn't understand. They were rude sometimes, kind other times. They moved without purpose or plan. On Xylar Prime, every step, every decision, was calculated. Here, the world felt alive, chaotic, and yet beautiful. She began observing not just the mechanics of human life, but the emotions behind it. One afternoon, as she walked through a park, she saw children playing. Their laughter was pure, uncalculated. They ran without concern for schedules or rules. One small child tripped and fell. Instead of panic, the child's friends helped him up and giggled. Leora felt a warmth in her chest, a feeling unfamiliar yet comforting. Humans cared for each other in ways that were messy but sincere. It was in this park that she first noticed Ethan. He was sketching something in a notebook, completely absorbed. His hair fell over his eyes, and when he noticed her staring, he smiled politely. "Hi," he said, his voice calm, friendly, without judgment. Leora blinked. Few humans approached her without awe or fear. "Hello," she replied, mimicking the tone she had practiced. Over the next few weeks, Leora encountered Ethan several times. He was always observing, always learning, like her. He showed her parks she had never noticed, taught her how to eat foods without making a mess, and patiently explained human habits she found confusing. She began to enjoy his company, though she reminded herself constantly that she could not grow attached. She was here for observation, a temporary guest in their world. Yet, Leora found herself laughing at Ethan's jokes. She felt anticipation when she saw him, a flutter in her chest that was alien to her ordered life. She began keeping a journal, not of observations for the council, but of her own thoughts, of things she found remarkable about humans. Their creativity, their resilience, their capacity for joy in small moments. She was learning not just about humans, but about herself. One evening, they visited a small gallery. Paintings of landscapes, people, and abstract forms covered the walls. Leora moved slowly, her fingers hovering over the textured surfaces. Ethan explained, "Humans use art to express what they cannot say in words. We fail often, but we try anyway." Leora considered the statement. On Xylar Prime, failures were minimized, mistakes corrected instantly. Here, mistakes created beauty, connection, understanding. She began to see that perfection was not the only path. Months passed. Leora learned to navigate streets, order food without hesitation, and engage in human conversation. She discovered music, dancing, and laughter that came from the soul. She experienced simple pleasures she had never imagined, feeling raindrops on her skin, smelling fresh bread, listening to the hum of a crowded street. The human world was messy, but it was alive in a way her world had never been. During this time, rumors began to spread among humans about the mysterious alien princess in their city. Some thought she was a performer, an eccentric artist. Others assumed she was a wealthy tourist from a distant land. Leora did not correct them. She enjoyed the anonymity, the freedom to explore without expectations. She felt, for the first time, unjudged by society, unbound by duty. One evening, under the soft glow of streetlights, Ethan and Leora sat on a park bench. He handed her a small flower he had picked from a patch of grass. But sometimes, simple things hold more meaning than grand ones. Leora took the flower, examining its delicate petals. She realized humans found significance in small gestures, in kindness, in empathy. Something stirred inside her, a recognition that life could be measured not by rules or expectations, but by the impact one had on others. Leora began experimenting with human ways of problem-solving, creativity, and communication. She helped organize a small community garden, teaching children how to plant seeds and care for them. They giggled at her strange gestures, mimicked her careful movements, and Leora laughed with them. The feeling of being part of something larger, of contributing to life in a way that mattered, filled her with a joy she had never experienced on Xylar Prime. Even at night, when she returned to her small rented apartment, she would sit by the window and look at the stars, thinking of her world far away. Xylar Prime had order, precision, and brilliance. But it lacked the unpredictability, the emotional depth, and the creativity she found on Earth. The humans had awakened something inside her, a spark she did not know existed. The council's joke was meant to be temporary, a source of amusement when she returned with nothing. Yet, as weeks turned into months, Leora began to wonder if perhaps this experiment would not end the way they expected. Perhaps humans were capable of more than even Xylarians could imagine. And perhaps, just perhaps, she was capable of more than she had ever known. By the time the first year on Earth passed, Leora had not only adapted, she had begun to thrive. She could laugh, cry, and create in ways that were entirely human. She could see beauty in imperfection, and find joy in unexpected places. And though she kept reminding herself that she was here temporarily, the thought of returning to a world of rigid rules and controlled perfection felt increasingly foreign. The council had intended a joke. They expected stories, nothing more. Yet Leora had discovered a world where life was lived fully, freely, and with heart. The seeds of something extraordinary had been planted, both in her mind and in the tiny, fragile connections she had made. She did not yet know that her life, and the life she would one day nurture, would challenge the assumptions of two worlds. She did not yet know that the joke would become a lesson, and that humans, in all their chaotic brilliance, would prove that life, love, and ingenuity were more powerful than even the most advanced technology. But for now, she simply smiled, looking at the stars above Earth, feeling for the first time that she belonged here, in this unpredictable, messy, beautiful world, ready to discover the unimaginable. Time passed, and Leora became more comfortable with the rhythm of human life. She had settled into a modest apartment in a quiet part of the city, far from the prying eyes of the media and curious onlookers. The humans she had met had become her friends, her guides, and in a way, her teachers. Every day brought something new, an unfamiliar scent, a sound she could not name, or a story that made her see the world differently. Ethan continued to be a constant in her life. He was not only patient, but genuinely curious about her perspective. Sometimes, they would sit for hours in the park, comparing human customs to the ways of Xylar Prime. Leora found herself explaining things she had never thought to analyze before: rituals, greetings, even laughter. In return, Ethan shared the small wonders of human invention: a musical instrument, a book of poetry, or a simple mechanical device he had created in his workshop. Leora began to notice a pattern: humans did not just survive. They created, improved, and celebrated life in ways that were different, but just as remarkable as Xylarian logic. One morning, as sunlight streamed through the window, Leora stood by the kitchen counter, attempting to cook a traditional human breakfast. Pancakes were surprisingly difficult to make, and the batter refused to behave as she expected. Ethan entered, holding a cup of tea, and watched her struggle with an amused smile. "You know," he said gently, "sometimes it's better to let things be a little imperfect. That's where the magic happens." Leora paused, spatula in hand, and considered his words. On Xylar Prime, precision and control were everything. Here, imperfection was not failure, it was part of life. She smiled, adjusting the heat, and flipping a pancake with newfound patience. As Leora continued her human lessons, she discovered more about connection, care, and creation. She volunteered at a local community center, helping children with their studies, sharing stories from distant planets in the guise of imaginative tales. The children listened with wide eyes, captivated by the alien princess who spoke of worlds beyond their own. Leora felt warmth in her heart that she had never known before. On Xylar Prime, admiration was formal and distant. Here, the joy of teaching, sharing, and seeing wonder in others' eyes was intoxicating. Ethan introduced her to the small pleasures of Earth that Leora had overlooked. They went on evening walks through the city, listening to street musicians, tasting different foods from tiny shops tucked away in alleys, and observing life in all its chaotic glory. Leora found herself fascinated not by the efficiency of humans, but by their adaptability. She saw them problem-solve in ways Xylarians would never consider, using creativity, empathy, and collaboration. It was messy, yes, but it worked, often beautifully so. One day, while walking through a library, Leora stumbled upon a section of books about human biology and genetics. She paused, fingers tracing the pages filled with illustrations and diagrams. Her own society had perfected reproduction, eliminating most risks and uncertainties. Humans, on the other hand, relied on chance, creativity, and resilience. And yet, somehow, they thrived. She read about genetic anomalies that allowed humans to adapt to different environments, about medical techniques developed not from perfection, but from trial and error. A thought stirred in her mind, a quiet curiosity that grew with each page she turned. Perhaps life could be more than Xylarian rules allowed. Perhaps the impossible was possible. Her days with Ethan and the children were full, but she still felt the call of observation. Leora documented everything she experienced: the laughter, the failures, the triumphs, the small victories humans achieved daily. She wrote in her journal not as a report for the council, but as a personal record of discovery. She began experimenting with human ways of thinking, observing how emotion and intellect combined to create unexpected solutions. It fascinated her. Humans did not have the precision of Xylarians, but they had ingenuity. They had heart. One evening, Ethan invited her to a small gathering of scientists and inventors. The room buzzed with ideas, plans, and debates. Humans discussed possibilities not because they were perfect but because they dared to try. Leora watched as a young woman explained a machine she had designed to clean polluted water using recycled materials. Others offered suggestions, not as criticism, but as collaboration. Leora marveled at the energy in the room. The council's joke that humans were primitive suddenly felt hollow. Here were beings capable of innovation, empathy, and resilience in ways that even Xylarians might struggle to replicate. It was during these gatherings that Leora began to see the true power of connection. Humans were not just individuals, they were communities, networks of ideas and emotion, capable of achieving what one alone could not. She shared stories of Xylar Prime, of their inventions and their logic, and humans listened eagerly, offering perspectives she had never considered. The exchange was enlightening. She realized that humans' apparent weaknesses, emotion, unpredictability, and imperfection were also their greatest strengths. One night, after a long day of teaching children and attending gatherings, Leora sat quietly on her balcony. The city stretched below her, lights twinkling like stars fallen to earth. She thought about the council's intentions. They had expected her to return with nothing. They had assumed humans were incapable of inspiring her in any meaningful way. Yet here she was, deeply changed, seeing a world of possibility she had never imagined. She understood now that their joke had underestimated both her curiosity and human potential. It was during this time that something even more remarkable began to happen. Leora discovered that the human body held capabilities she had never experienced. While she had long believed herself infertile, the closeness she shared with Ethan and the understanding of human biology sparked something new within her. She began to feel a subtle change, an awakening of possibilities she had never considered. It was not immediate, and it was not fully understood, but it filled her with hope and wonder. Life, it seemed, had a way of surprising even the most certain of beings. As months turned into a year, Leora's bond with humans deepened. She laughed more freely, cried without fear, and felt emotions she had never been allowed to fully explore on Xylar Prime. She learned patience, kindness, and empathy in ways no book or training could teach. Humans had shown her that life was not about control, but about adaptation and growth. And in this growth, she began to sense the possibilities of life that transcended what her own species had deemed impossible. Ethan noticed her transformation, too. One evening, as they walked through a quiet garden, he said, "You're different now. I can see it. You're learning from them, from us, but also from yourself. It's like you're discovering something you didn't know existed." Leora smiled, feeling the truth in his words. She had indeed changed. The world of humans had opened doors within her, not just about life, but about hope, love, and creation. The children she taught became little ambassadors of her learning. They asked questions, challenged her stories, and laughed at her attempts to mimic human customs. She realized that through teaching and interaction, she was shaping the future in small ways, guiding humans while learning from them. The reciprocal nature of growth fascinated her. Humans did not just receive, they gave back, taught, and inspired. And then came a day when Leora finally understood the extent of her transformation. She stood in front of a mirror, observing herself as she had not done in years. The alien elegance remained, but there was something new in her eyes, a spark of life, curiosity, and possibility. She was no longer the princess sent as a joke. She was a being transformed by humanity, ready to embrace the unknown, capable of achievements even her own people might have deemed impossible. Her time on Earth had taught her many things: patience, creativity, resilience, empathy, and hope. She had learned that life was not merely about rules and perfection, but about connections, experiences, and the courage to try what seemed impossible. And as she looked at the stars beyond the city lights, she realized that she was no longer bound by the limitations the council had placed on her. Something extraordinary had begun, and she could feel it growing within her. She did not yet know the full extent of what was possible, but she was ready. Humans had shown her that limitations could be challenged, that life could surprise even the most certain of minds, and that creation was not merely a function of biology, but of hope, ingenuity, and love. The council's joke had transformed into a journey of discovery, and Leora was prepared to see where it would lead next. And so, with a heart full of wonder and a mind open to possibilities, Leora continued her life among humans, learning, teaching, and discovering the extraordinary power of life in all its unpredictable brilliance. She had come to Earth as a subject of a joke, but she was becoming something far greater. A bridge between worlds, a student of humanity, and perhaps a witness to the impossible. The announcement from the Council of Elders echoed throughout Xylar Prime. Princess Leora was to return. The news stirred a mixture of curiosity, excitement, and smug amusement among the citizens. Many had already prepared their jokes, anticipating tales of human absurdity and the princess's inevitable failure. After all, they had sent her away as a light-hearted experiment, fully expecting her to come back empty-handed, perhaps a little wiser, but certainly unchanged in essence. Leora's preparations were quiet. She packed her modest belongings, careful to include the mementos of Earth, her journal, sketches from Ethan, a few small trinkets she had collected over the months. She had changed in ways the council could not measure or understand. The lessons she had learned from humans had reshaped her, teaching her patience, creativity, and empathy in ways her rigid upbringing never could. She felt both nervous and excited about returning. The council expected a report. She intended to deliver more than that. When Leora arrived on Xylar Prime, the city looked the same: gleaming towers, precise streets, and the ever-present hum of advanced technology. Yet she saw it differently. To her, the order felt rigid, the perfection cold. She had tasted chaos and imperfection on Earth, and she understood their beauty. Walking through the palace halls, she noticed the whispers, the curious glances. Some courtiers whispered, "She has returned, unchanged," as expected. But others paused, sensing something different, though they could not define it. The Council of Elders gathered in the great chamber to receive her. Their expressions were a blend of amusement and mild condescension. "Welcome back, Princess," one said. "Tell us of these humans. Surely, your journey was enlightening?" Leora nodded politely, taking a moment to collect her thoughts. She had learned to speak in measured tones, as the council preferred, but she also knew that this was her moment to show them what she had discovered. "I have learned more than I could have imagined," she began, her voice calm but confident. "Humans live differently from us, yet they are remarkable. They are resourceful, empathetic, and creative in ways that surpass mere logic. They adapt to challenges we would not dare face, and they thrive despite imperfection. I have observed, learned, and participated in their world, and I have changed because of it." A murmur spread through the chamber. The council had expected descriptions of Earth's technology, culture, and flaws. Instead, Leora spoke of empathy, creativity, and resilience, concepts that Xylarians acknowledged intellectually but rarely practiced. She continued, "I have also discovered something I did not anticipate. What was considered impossible, what I thought I could not achieve, has become possible." The council members exchanged puzzled glances. Leora paused, then slowly placed her hand on her abdomen. A soft, steady glow emanated from beneath her robes, subtle yet undeniable. The room fell silent. Princess Leora, believed to be infertile, was carrying life. The council's joke had backfired in the most extraordinary way imaginable. This is impossible," one elder whispered, his voice trembling with astonishment. You You have conceived a child? How? Leora smiled gently. Humans taught me to see life differently, to embrace possibilities beyond rigid calculation. It was not a matter of biology alone, but of understanding, connection, and hope. I have experienced a kind of creation that transcends what we once thought possible. The council was stunned. Their amusement had dissolved into awe, confusion, and a dawning respect. For centuries, Xylarians had believed themselves the pinnacle of intelligence and capability. Yet here was undeniable proof that humans and the lessons they offered could surpass expectations in ways even the most advanced species could not predict. Word spread quickly across Xylar Prime. Citizens gathered outside the palace, eager to catch a glimpse of Leora and the life growing within her. They whispered excitedly about the impossible. About the princess who had returned with proof that humans were not merely primitive beings, but extraordinary in ways the council had underestimated. The joke had transformed into a revelation, challenging long-held beliefs about life, intelligence, and potential. Leora was invited to speak before a broader audience of scientists, scholars, and educators. She described her experiences on Earth, the lessons of cooperation, creativity, empathy, and problem-solving. She shared stories of Ethan, the children she had taught, and the communities that had welcomed her. Every word emphasized the ingenuity of humans and the strength of their spirit. Her audience listened intently, captivated not only by her story but by the undeniable message it carried. Humanity was capable of inspiring change on a galactic scale. Elders who had been skeptical began to ask questions, curious about the methods, approaches, and ideas Leora had encountered on Earth. How did humans solve problems without precise calculations? How did they create systems that thrived despite imperfection? Leora explained patiently, using examples from her observations. Community gardens, collaborative inventions, art, storytelling, and education. She emphasized that human strength lay not in brute force or strict logic, but in their ability to combine intellect with empathy, creativity, and adaptability. Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for: the introduction of the child. The council, still grappling with disbelief, approached Leora cautiously. The baby, a small hybrid of human and Xylarian traits, lay peacefully in her arms. Its eyes shimmered with intelligence and curiosity, reflecting the blend of two worlds. The room was silent, every being present, aware that they were witnessing something unprecedented, a new life born not from expectation, but from the power of possibility and understanding. This child represents more than a union of species, Leora said softly. It represents the potential of connection, learning, and growth. It is proof that life can surprise us, that limitations can be challenged, and that hope and ingenuity can create the impossible. The council members, long accustomed to rigid thought and hierarchical control, began to see a new perspective. Humanity, with its unpredictable brilliance, had offered lessons that Xylarians could not ignore. Leora's journey demonstrated that intelligence alone did not define greatness. Adaptability, creativity, and empathy were equally vital. Over the following weeks, Leora worked with scientists, educators, and philosophers to share her insights. Humans had inspired her, but now her knowledge became a bridge, linking Xylar Prime with Earth in ways that had never been considered. Collaborative projects began, combining Xylarian technology with human ingenuity. Gardens, schools, and laboratories were established, designed to incorporate human methods of learning and experimentation. Citizens began to approach Leora, asking questions, seeking guidance, and listening eagerly to her experiences. Her presence transformed the palace from a place of formal perfection into a center of innovation and learning. People realized that the rigid rules they had cherished were not the only path to achievement. Flexibility, empathy, and creativity could yield results that were just as remarkable, if not more so. Ethan arrived on Xylar Prime to witness Leora's transformation firsthand. His calm, patient demeanor and unwavering support had been instrumental in her growth. Together, They shared insights about humanity's strengths, demonstrating that collaboration between species could yield unprecedented results. The Council, initially hesitant, began to recognize the value of these cross-cultural exchanges. Humans were not merely subjects of observation. They were teachers, innovators, and partners in creation. Leora also introduced her child to Xylarian society. The baby became a symbol of unity, possibility, and inspiration. Its presence challenged preconceived notions about life, reproduction, and intelligence. Citizens marveled at the hybrid, seeing in it a reflection of two worlds coming together in harmony. The child's laughter, curiosity, and small achievements brought joy and hope, reminding everyone that life's greatest wonders often emerge from the unexpected. As the months passed, Leora continued to teach, learn, and inspire. She encouraged Xylarians to embrace the lessons she had discovered on Earth: the power of curiosity, the value of empathy, and the beauty of imperfection. She demonstrated that limitations could be overcome, that creativity and cooperation were as vital as logic and precision, and that even the most rigid society could evolve when open to new ideas. The Council, once amused by their joke, now regarded Leora with deep respect. She had returned not just with a child, but with knowledge, experience, and proof that humans could teach even the most advanced civilizations something profound. The lesson was clear. Greatness is not solely measured by intelligence or technology, but by the ability to connect, create, and inspire. In the quiet moments, Leora reflected on her journey. She had come to Earth as a subject of a joke, meant to amuse and return empty-handed. Yet she had discovered the extraordinary within the ordinary, the miraculous within the mundane. She had learned that life was more than rules and calculations. It was connection, creation, and courage. And now, she had returned to share that wisdom, transforming her world and opening doors to possibilities that had once seemed impossible. The child in her arms cooed softly, reaching out to touch her face. Leora smiled, feeling a profound sense of fulfillment. This life, this being, was the culmination of her journey, proof that hope, ingenuity, and empathy could change everything. Humans had taught her to see the world differently, to believe in the impossible, and to embrace life with heart and mind united. And as she looked around the great chamber of the Council, filled with astonished and inspired faces, Leora knew that her journey was only beginning. The Council's joke had transformed into a story of learning, growth, and hope. The hybrid child was not just a miracle of biology, it was a testament to the power of humanity, to the extraordinary potential that lay within beings willing to embrace connection, creativity, and compassion. In that moment, Leora realized that the journey of discovery she had begun on Earth would continue on Xylar Prime, and perhaps beyond. Humans had shown her that the impossible was merely unexplored, that greatness could emerge from unexpected places, and that life, in all its forms, held infinite potential. She was no longer a subject of a joke. She was a witness, a teacher, and a bridge between worlds, carrying the legacy of humanity into the future. Leora walked through the palace gardens, the soft hum of Xylar Prime's energy grids blending with the gentle rustle of leaves. The city had begun to change. Where once there had been rigid order and sparkling precision, now there was warmth, curiosity, and the lively energy of ideas shared freely. Children ran between gardens, their laughter echoing like music. Citizens paused to help one another, share insights, or simply enjoy a moment without strict schedules. Leora had not returned merely as a princess. She had returned as a messenger of possibility. Her child, a small hybrid of human and Xylarian traits, toddled beside her, exploring the world with wide, curious eyes. Every new experience, the texture of leaves, the smell of flowers, the chatter of humans and Xylarians alike, was met with awe and delight. Leora watched with a smile, realizing that this child was more than a symbol of life. It was a bridge between two worlds. Through its laughter, learning, and growth, it would teach the citizens of Xylar Prime that connection and understanding could unlock new horizons. Ethan stood nearby, helping the child navigate a small garden path. His presence, calm and steady, was a reminder of the lessons that had shaped Leora's journey: patience, curiosity, and the courage to embrace the unknown. He looked at Leora and whispered, "They're learning from you, from all of this. You've changed more than just yourself." Leora nodded, feeling the truth in his words. The council's joke had transformed into a movement. Humans, through their creativity and empathy, had sparked change across a world she had once believed was unchangeable. The council called a gathering to discuss the future. Leora stood before them, her child cradled gently in her arms. The elders, who had once dismissed humans as simple and inferior, now listened with focused attention. The princess spoke of Earth, of human ingenuity, resilience, and collaboration. She shared stories of children learning through play, communities building gardens from nothing, and inventors solving problems without fear of failure. "It is not their technology or power that makes humans remarkable," Leora explained. "It is their ability to create, adapt, and care for one another. They teach us that imperfection is not weakness, but opportunity. That curiosity can drive innovation, and empathy can guide intelligence. These are lessons our world can embrace, and through them, we can grow beyond what we once thought possible." The elders, once rigid and formal, now nodded thoughtfully. Some whispered to one another, considering how these ideas could be incorporated into their society. A new curiosity had been awakened, a desire to learn from a species they had once considered trivial. Leora's presence and experiences had shifted their perspective, showing that even the most advanced civilization could benefit from humility and openness. Citizens watched as the hybrid child took its first steps in the palace gardens. Leora encouraged them, gently guiding the tiny hands toward flowers and soft grass. The child reached out to humans and Xylarians alike, its small gestures of curiosity and wonder, prompting smiles and laughter. The scene was simple, yet profound. Here was proof that life could bridge differences, that connection could overcome centuries of separation and hierarchy. Leora began organizing workshops, bringing humans and Xylarians together to share ideas. They built gardens that combined Xylarian efficiency with human creativity, laboratories where experiments followed both logic and intuition, and classrooms where children learned the value of empathy alongside knowledge. Each project was a testament to the potential unlocked when two worlds collaborated. Ethan worked alongside Leora, teaching humans and Xylarians how to observe, experiment, and adapt. He emphasized problem-solving that valued emotion as well as intellect. Citizens marveled at his methods, realizing that the simplicity and ingenuity of humans complemented their own technological prowess. Together, Leora and Ethan nurtured an environment of growth, curiosity, and hope. Over time, Leora's child became a symbol of this new era. The baby's laughter drew people together, its curiosity inspired learning, and its very existence challenged assumptions about life and possibility. Parents and educators alike looked at the child and recognized the potential within every human and Xylarian life. That growth, innovation, and connection were limitless when nurtured with care and understanding. Leora often reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She remembered the initial uncertainty, the humor of the council's prank, and the chaotic yet beautiful world of Earth that had taught her so much. She realized that the true lesson was never about fertility, technology, or perfection. It was about openness, courage, and the willingness to embrace the unknown. Humans had shown her that even the smallest actions, a kind word, a shared laugh, a creative experiment could ripple across the world, changing hearts and minds. One evening, as the suns of Xylar Prime set in a spectacular display of colors, Leora sat with her child on a hill overlooking the city. Ethan joined her, holding a small book of Earth stories they had shared over the years. Together, they read aloud, the child's laughter mingling with the gentle glow of the suns. Leora realized that this simple act, reading, sharing, and teaching, was a form of creation far greater than any experiment or calculation. It was life lived fully, openly, and with heart. News of Leora's experiences and the hybrid child spread beyond the palace. Scholars, scientists, and leaders from distant worlds requested knowledge, eager to understand how humans could inspire such transformation. Leora welcomed these visitors, sharing stories, lessons, and insights. She emphasized that the secret was not in technology alone, but in empathy, curiosity, and the courage to embrace imperfection. Humanity, she explained, was extraordinary not because of tools or power, but because of its spirit. Communities across Xylar Prime began to adopt these principles. Gardens flourished where none had existed before. Children learned through play and exploration. And adults collaborated in ways that combined logic with creativity. The rigid structures of the past softened, replaced with an adaptable, thriving society that valued connection as much as achievement. Leora's presence and experiences had sparked a revolution not of force, but of inspiration. Through it all, Leora remained humble. She knew that her journey had been shaped by humans, their patience, creativity, and kindness. She honored their lessons by passing them forward, nurturing the next generation to embrace possibility, innovation, and compassion. And in her child, she saw the promise of a future where Xylarians and humans could grow together, learning from one another, achieving together, and celebrating life in all its complexity. As years passed, the hybrid child grew, displaying traits of both species: intelligence, curiosity, empathy, and resilience. Citizens marveled at its achievements, inspired by its example to pursue knowledge, creativity, and connection. Leora watched with pride, knowing that the child embodied the lessons of Earth and Xylar Prime combined a living proof of the extraordinary potential that arises when worlds meet and learn from each other. The Council, once the architects of a joke, became advocates of collaboration. They traveled to Earth to observe firsthand the communities that had inspired Leora. They marveled at human resilience, creativity, and ingenuity. Their perspectives shifted entirely, understanding that greatness was not solely in technology or order, but in the ability to connect, create, and inspire. Leora continued to work tirelessly, not for recognition, but for the promise of a brighter future. She fostered partnerships between humans and Xylarians, blending knowledge, creativity, and empathy. Laboratories developed innovations that combined intuition with precision. Schools taught children to value both knowledge and understanding. Communities thrived on shared effort and mutual respect. In quiet moments, Leora reflected on how far she had come. She had arrived on Earth as the subject of a prank, a princess dismissed as incapable of extraordinary acts. Yet she had returned to her world transformed, carrying life, lessons, and hope. She had discovered that the power of humans was not in their tools or strength, but in their spirit, their ability to dream, to try, to connect, and to inspire. And now, looking at the city of Xylar Prime, alive with curiosity, creativity, and laughter, Leora understood the true meaning of her journey. It was not about proving others wrong or fulfilling expectations. It was about nurturing potential, bridging worlds, and demonstrating that life, in all its forms, held possibilities far beyond what anyone could imagine. The hybrid child reached for her hand, eyes sparkling with curiosity. Leora knelt, taking its small hand gently. "The world is yours to explore," she whispered. "Learn, create, and inspire. Show others what is possible." And with that, she knew that the journey would continue not just for her or for her child, but for all those who chose to embrace curiosity, connection, and the courage to reach beyond the limits they once believed were fixed. Humans had taught her that life's greatest lessons were often found in the unexpected, and that the power to change the world was within every being willing to learn, care, and dream. The sun set, painting the sky with colors she had once admired from afar, but now understood more deeply. Leora, her child, and Ethan stood together, watching the city glow with the light of possibility. Xylar Prime had begun to evolve, inspired by a species once thought simple, guided by a princess who had dared to learn, and a child who would carry the legacy forward. It was a quiet revolution, not of force, but of hope. And it was only the beginning.